Most people think July is too late to plant anything. They're wrong, and it's costing them a beautiful garden. The truth is, some of the toughest, most rewarding perennials actually prefer going into the ground right now. Stick around, because these 10 plants aren't just going to survive your summer, they're going to define it. 1. Purple coneflower. If your garden feels a little lifeless by mid-summer, coneflower fixes that instantly. Its bold purple-pink petals surround a spiky copper center that butterflies and bees can't resist. It's native to North American prairies, which means it's built for heat, drought, and neglect, the exact conditions July throws at us. Plant it in full sun, water it in well, and then mostly leave it alone. Once established, coneflower can handle weeks without rain and still keep blooming into fall. It grows anywhere from 2 to 5 feet tall depending on the variety, and it actually performs best in average to poor soil. Rich, heavily fertilized ground can make it leggy and floppy instead of sturdy. Echinacea root has a long history in Native American herbal traditions, which is part of why the plant carries such a strong sense of place in American gardens. Space plants roughly 18 inches apart to give them room to bulk up, and don't be surprised if a few volunteer seedlings show up nearby next spring. Coneflower self-seeds readily once it's happy. It's hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, which covers the vast majority of the country, and it pairs beautifully with ornamental grasses like little bluestem for a naturalistic, low-water border. The most common mistake gardeners make is treating it like a delicate flower and overwatering it. Coneflower actually blooms better when it has to work a little for moisture. Leave the seed heads standing through winter, and you'll feed goldfinches for free. 2. Black-eyed Susan. Black-eyed Susan is the plant that makes a garden feel alive. Its cheerful yellow petals and dark chocolate centers seem to glow in July sunlight, and it multiplies generously, so one small planting today can become a full drift within a couple of seasons. It's remarkably forgiving of poor soil and inconsistent watering, which makes it perfect for gardeners who want big color without babysitting. There are both true perennial varieties, like Rudbeckia fulgida, and biennial or short-lived types, like Rudbeckia hirta. If you want it to come back reliably for years, check the plant tag before you buy. It typically reaches 1.5 to 3 feet tall, pairs beautifully with purple coneflower and Russian sage for a classic prairie-style combo, and rarely has serious pest problems. Deadheading spent blooms will encourage a second flush later in the season. It's hardy from zones 3 to 9 and is actually the state flower of Maryland, where it's celebrated every spring at the Preakness horse race with garlands made from its blooms. Rabbits and deer generally leave it alone, which makes it a smart pick for gardeners dealing with heavy browsing pressure. Give it sun, give it space, and it will reward you with blooms that last well into October. 3. Daylily. Daylilies have earned the nickname, the perfect perennial, and once you grow one, you'll understand why. Each flower only lasts a single day, but each plant produces so many buds that the show continues for weeks. They tolerate heat, humidity, poor soil, and even a bit of drought once established, and they're nearly impossible to kill outright. Even a neglected clump tucked into a forgotten corner will usually keep blooming year after year. There are over 80,000 registered daylily cultivars, ranging from soft pastel yellows to deep burgundy and near black, so there's essentially a daylily for every color scheme. Planting now means the roots have time to settle in before the plant goes dormant for winter, setting you up for a much bigger bloom next summer. Divide clumps every 3 to 4 years in early spring or fall to keep them blooming vigorously, and you'll have free plants to fill the rest of your yard. As a bonus, the young flower buds and blossoms are edible and are actually used in some Asian cuisines, though you should always confirm the specific variety before eating anything from the garden. Daylilies thrive in zones 3 through 9, tolerate both clay and sandy soil, and their thick root systems make them excellent for controlling erosion on slopes. Choosing re-blooming varieties, like the popular Stella de Oro, gives you a much longer bloom window than older heirloom types that flower for just a few weeks. 4. Russian Sage. If you want a plant that looks like a soft purple cloud drifting through your garden, Russian Sage is it. Its silvery stems and lavender blue flowers thrive in the exact conditions many other plants struggle with: blazing sun, dry soil, and reflected heat off patios or driveways. It's deer-resistant, drought-tolerant once established, and releases a light sage-like fragrance when brushed, thanks to aromatic oils in its foliage that also help repel rabbits. Despite the name, it isn't a true sage at all. It's actually more closely related to mint, which explains the square stems if you look closely. It can reach 3 to 5 feet tall and wide, so give it room to spread, and resist the urge to overwater it. Soggy soil is really the only thing that kills this plant. Cut it back hard in early spring to about 6 inches, and it will flush out fresh growth for the coming season. It's hardy in zones 4 through 9 and, despite its delicate appearance, holds up remarkably well to wind, making it a great choice for exposed sites or coastal gardens. Its airy, see-through structure also makes it a favorite among garden designers for softening the front of a border without hiding the plants behind it. This is a plant for gardeners who want beauty without a watering schedule. 5. Sedum. Sedum is proof that a plant doesn't need to be fussy to be beautiful. Its thick, succulent-like leaves store water, so it barely notices summer drought, and by late summer it forms broad clusters of star-shaped flowers that shift from soft pink to deep rust as the season progresses. Bees and butterflies flock to it right when other nectar sources start to fade, making it one of the most important late-season food sources in the whole garden. It's technically a succulent, which is why it handles heat and dry spells so effortlessly, and it holds up well even in poor, rocky soil where other perennials struggle. Growing to about 18 to 24 inches tall, it also offers fantastic winter interest. The dried flower heads turn a rich copper brown and look striking dusted with frost. So many gardeners leave them standing all winter instead of cutting them back. Plant it now in well-drained soil, and it will quietly build strength underground before putting on its real show later in the year. It's hardy from zones 3 to 9 and is one of the easiest perennials to propagate. Simply snap off a stem, let the cut end callus for a day, and push it into soil to root a brand new plant for free. Older clumps can eventually flop open in the middle. Dividing them every few years keeps the mound tight and upright. 6. Yarrow. Yarrow is the plant that thrives on being ignored. Flat clusters of tiny flowers in yellow, white, or soft pink sit atop feathery, almost fern-like foliage, creating texture as much as color. It tolerates poor, rocky soil, intense sun, and long dry spells, conditions that would stress out most other flowering plants, and it's one of the few perennials that genuinely prefers to be left alone rather than fussed over with fertilizer. Historically, yarrow was even used in traditional herbal remedies and was carried by soldiers as far back as ancient Greece to help treat wounds, which adds a quiet layer of history to something growing in your own backyard. It spreads by underground rhizomes, so a single plant can slowly fill in a sunny bank or border, and cutting it back after the first bloom often triggers a second round of flowers later in summer. It's also a favorite of ladybugs and other beneficial insects that help keep pest populations down naturally. Yarrow is hardy in zones 3 through 9, holds up beautifully as a cut flower, and actually dries well too, making it popular in everlasting flower arrangements. Because it spreads so readily, it's worth giving it a defined bed or border edge if you don't want it wandering into neighboring plantings. 7. Bee Balm. Few plants attract pollinators as fast as bee balm. Its shaggy firework-shaped blooms in red, pink, or purple are a magnet for hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies, turning your garden into a living, buzzing ecosystem. Crush a leaf between your fingers, and you'll release a fragrance somewhere between mint and citrus. In fact, bee balm is a member of the mint family, and its leaves have long been used to make herbal tea, including by indigenous communities long before European settlers arrived. It prefers consistent moisture, so a bit of regular watering after planting will help it settle in strong before the heat peaks. One thing to watch for is powdery mildew in humid climates. Planting mildew-resistant varieties and giving plants good air circulation will keep the foliage cleaner through late summer. It spreads via rhizomes and can form generous colonies over a few seasons, so it's a great choice if your goal is a pollinator meadow rather than a tidy, contained bed. It's hardy in zones 4 through 9, and its common name comes from early settlers who noticed bees swarming to it constantly. Modern breeding has produced dwarf varieties under 2 feet tall, which work well in smaller gardens or containers where the classic 3 to 4 foot types would be too large. 8. Garden Phlox. Garden phlox brings a wave of fragrance and color right when midsummer gardens need it most. Its dense clusters of pink, purple, or white flowers rise on sturdy stems, and the scent alone is enough to draw people outside in the evening. It prefers consistent moisture and good air circulation, so give it a little breathing room from neighboring plants to keep it healthy through humid weeks and reduce the risk of powdery mildew, which is this plant's main vulnerability. Garden phlox typically grows 2 to 4 feet tall and is a magnet for hummingbird moths and butterflies, particularly swallowtails, making it a strong choice if you're building a pollinator-friendly border. Deadheading faded flower clusters not only keeps the plant tidy but also prevents unwanted self-seeding, since seedlings often revert to a less vibrant magenta color rather than the parent plant's true shade. It's hardy in zones 4 through 8 and, unlike most of the plants on this list, actually appreciates a layer of mulch to keep its roots cool and moist through the hottest weeks of summer. Newer mildew-resistant cultivars, such as David or Gina, are worth seeking out if you've struggled with phlox foliage looking ragged by August in past seasons. 9. Coreopsis. Coreopsis is one of the most cheerful, low-effort perennials you can grow. Its daisy-like yellow flowers bloom in waves from early summer straight through fall, especially if you snip off the spent blooms. It handles poor soil, drought, and heat with ease, making it a reliable choice for gardeners who want long-lasting color without constant maintenance. The name, tickseed, actually comes from the shape of its seeds, which resemble small ticks, a quirky bit of trivia that tends to stick with viewers. It's a favorite nectar source for small butterflies and native bees, stays relatively compact at 1 to 2 feet tall, and works especially well massed together in drifts along a border or mixed into a wildflower-style meadow planting. Some varieties are shorter-lived than others, so dividing clumps every couple of years helps keep the planting full and vigorous. Coreopsis is hardy in zones 4 through 9, tolerates poor sandy soil better than almost anything else on this list, and is actually the state wildflower of Florida, where it grows wild along highways and open fields. It's also one of the more reliable perennials for gardeners in hot, humid climates where many other sunlovers tend to struggle. 10. Lavender. Lavender closes out our list because it does everything a July perennial should. It thrives in heat, needs very little water once established, and rewards you with one of the most calming fragrances in the entire garden world. Bees love it, deer avoid it, and its silvery green foliage stays attractive even when it isn't in bloom, giving it real value as a structural plant year-round. Well-drained soil is the one non-negotiable. Lavender would rather be dry than wet, and more plants are lost to soggy roots than to heat or cold combined, so raised beds or slightly sloped ground are ideal if your soil holds moisture. English lavender varieties are generally the hardiest choice for colder climates, while French and Spanish types offer bolder fragrance but need milder winters to survive outdoors. Beyond the garden, lavender has a long history of use in aromatherapy, sachets, and culinary applications, and simply brushing past a mature plant on a warm afternoon is one of the simplest pleasures a garden can offer. English varieties are hardy in zones 5 through 9, and adding a handful of gravel or sand to the planting hole can dramatically improve drainage in heavier clay soils. Pruning lightly after the first bloom, and again in early spring, keeps plants compact and woody-stemmed rather than sprawling and leggy over time. 10 plants, one simple truth. Your garden doesn't stop growing in July, only the excuses do. Pick even 2 or 3 of these, get them in the ground this week, and by next summer you'll have a garden that takes care of itself. If this helped, subscribe for more real, practical gardening guides, and tell me in the comments which perennial you're planting first.